1977, Silicon Valley, California. Three programmers sit in a cramped office staring at an IBM research paper. The paper describes a theoretical way to organize data that doesn't actually exist yet, just an idea on paper. One of them, a guy who's been bouncing between programming jobs his whole life, looks at his partners and says, "What if we just build it and sell it?" That guy's name is Larry Ellison, and he just had an idea worth $250 billion. But here's the twist. The really interesting part of this story isn't how he made his fortune. It's what he's doing with it right now. Because in 2025, while you were scrolling TikTok, watching HBO, checking CNN, Larry Ellison and his son quietly assembled the most powerful media empire in history, and most people have no idea who they are. They're about to own TikTok. They just bought Paramount. They're going after Warner Brothers, and the cage they're building around your information is almost complete. This is the story of how a database salesman became America's digital landlord, and why that should terrify you. Let's start with something you need to understand about Larry Ellison. He was never the smartest programmer in the room. Born in 1944, adopted as an infant, raised in South Chicago by an aunt and uncle who struggled financially, Larry grew up with a chip on his shoulder the size of Texas. His biological mother was 19 when she gave him up. He never met his biological father again. Those early wounds shaped everything that came after: the need to prove himself, the refusal to accept authority, the hunger for power that would never quite be satisfied. He questioned authority constantly, got into fights with teachers, enrolled in 2 different colleges, and dropped out of both. His adoptive father was cold and unsupportive, the kind of authoritarian figure Larry would spend his life rebelling against, even as he became exactly what he hated. By his 30s, he was a wandering programmer, taking whatever contract work he could find. Wells Fargo, random tech companies, nothing stuck. He was living paycheck to paycheck with a spending problem and no real direction. Then, in the 1970s, he landed at a company called Ampex, working on a CIA project codenamed Oracle. They needed a database program. The project stalled, but Larry met 2 other programmers, Bob Miner and Ed Oates, who actually knew what they were doing. That's when Larry saw the IBM research paper. IBM had published a theoretical framework for something called a relational database. The old way of storing data was a mess. You could put information in, but getting it back out efficiently was nearly impossible. The relational model organized everything into tables with built-in connections, so you could retrieve what you needed fast. IBM published the theory, but they hadn't actually built a working version yet. Larry realized something. If his team could build it first, they could sell it to anyone who needed to manage large amounts of data, which was basically everyone. So, Larry, Bob, and Ed quit their jobs and started a company. They called it Software Development Laboratories. Later, they renamed it after that CIA project they'd worked on, Oracle. But here's the genius move that nobody talks about. Larry gave himself a 60% stake. Bob and Ed, who would do all the actual programming work, got far less. Larry had positioned himself as the leader before a single line of code was written. Their first customer? The CIA. $50,000 in 1978, because spies need to keep track of a lot of people. And here's where Larry's real talent emerged. Bob was the builder, the guy who could actually make the software work. Ed handled the technical details. Larry was the salesman. And not just any salesman. He was ruthless. Inside Oracle, they had a saying, GTM, GTFM. Get the money, get the money. Employees described it as the Wolf of Wall Street for databases. Larry would promise customers features that didn't exist yet. He'd guarantee delivery dates his team couldn't possibly meet. He'd price things aggressively, then jack up the rates once customers were locked in. Then Bob and Ed would scramble to catch up, while Larry hunted the next deal. It was chaotic, it was aggressive, and it worked. For 11 straight years, Oracle's sales doubled annually. They went public in 1986, making Larry a multi-millionaire overnight. By 1992, he was a billionaire. But being rich wasn't the goal. Larry once said his competitors should be run out of business, their buildings bulldozed, the earth salted, then he'd go after their families. In the early 2000s, he paid private investigators to go through Microsoft's trash looking for dirt. He was found guilty of cheating in sailboat racing. In 2001, he sold $900 million of Oracle stock right before a weak earnings report. Classic insider trading. The SEC never filed charges, but shareholders sued. He settled by donating $100 million to a charity of his choice and walked away with $800 million. Larry wasn't building a company, he was building an empire. And empires need two things: infrastructure and control. Oracle became both. Here's what most people don't understand about Oracle. They don't sell you a product, they sell you a cage. By the 2000s, Oracle stopped competing and started consuming. They bought every competitor in sight. 2005, PeopleSoft. 2006, Siebel Systems. 2008, BEA Systems. 2009, Sun Microsystems. 2016, NetSuite. 2022, Cerner, a healthcare data giant. Each acquisition made Oracle more essential, more embedded, more impossible to escape. Banks couldn't switch database systems. Their entire transaction history lived in Oracle. Hospitals couldn't migrate patient records without risking catastrophic errors. Government agencies had built entire departments around Oracle infrastructure. Oracle doesn't have customers. It has hostages. They'd offer products for free or heavily discounted, get their foot in the door. Then, once you were dependent, prices would skyrocket. And switching, that would cost tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions. One former Oracle engineer said it perfectly. From the outside, I thought Oracle was a great competitor. Inside, I realized it's a company that hates competition and wants to crush it. Today, Oracle runs databases for 10 of the 10 largest banks. They host data for United Healthcare, Citibank, Bank of America, Coca-Cola, and pretty much every Fortune 500 company. They have contracts with the Department of Defense, the CIA, the NSA, and the Air Force. You have used Oracle products without knowing it. They host over 1 million websites: TikTok, Zoom, Uber, FedEx, NVIDIA, you name it. Oracle is the invisible infrastructure of modern life, the plumbing, the foundation, and Larry Ellison owns 41% of it. Which brings us to the really terrifying part: what Larry wants to do with all that power. By the early 2000s, Larry Ellison had reached a level of wealth that borders on absurd. He bought the 6th largest island in Hawaii, Lanai, for $300 million. Not a house on an island, the entire island. When he took over, he opened a Nobu restaurant and started implementing 30-day eviction notices for locals who'd lived there for generations. He turned it into a playground for the ultra-rich. Tom Cruise visits, Elon Musk visits, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been photographed taking Pilates at the local hotel. The locals call it a laboratory. Larry calls it a testing ground for sustainability. But what he's really testing is control. He owns yachts so big they have basketball courts. When balls go overboard, a trailing speedboat fetches them. He races sailboats competitively, and once got caught in the biggest cheating scandal in America's Cup history. He owns a fighter jet, multiple estates. He's been married and divorced 4 times. He's had so much plastic surgery that his face looks like it was designed by a committee that couldn't agree. At 81 years old, Larry Ellison is worth over $250 billion, making him the 2nd richest person on Earth. But here's what makes Larry different from other tech billionaires. He doesn't just want money. He wants total knowledge. the power to see everything. In September 2024, at an Oracle investor meeting, Larry stood in front of a room full of analysts and described his vision for the future. "We're going to have supervision," he said with a smile. "Every police officer is going to be supervised at all times. AI will report problems to the appropriate person." Then he said the line that should have made headlines everywhere. "Citizens will be on their best behavior because we are constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on." He wasn't talking theoretically. Oracle already makes body cameras for police. They're developing AI-powered school surveillance systems that can detect guns using cameras. They've pitched drones that can autonomously follow suspects during car chases. At another conference in Dubai, Larry told former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair that governments need to unify all their data, economic data, health records, genomic information, infrastructure data, into single databases that AI can analyze. And who would run those databases? Of course, Oracle. Now here's the uncomfortable part that connects everything. In 2022, Oracle was sued for running what the lawsuit called a worldwide surveillance machine, allegedly collecting billions of people's personal information without consent and selling it to third parties. They settled for $115 million without admitting wrongdoing. So the company that was just sued for illegal surveillance is now being handed the keys to TikTok, and the guy who openly fantasizes about constant AI monitoring is about to control what 170 million Americans see on their phones. But before we get to TikTok, we need to talk about Larry's political beliefs, because they explain everything that's about to happen. Larry Ellison says he's not religious. He grew up in a Jewish household, attended synagogue regularly, but claims he never cared much for religion. Yet he's one of the largest supporters of Israel in the world. He's donated over $16 million to Friends of the IDF, the Israeli military. According to leaked emails, he made Marco Rubio run speeches by him to ensure they were sufficiently pro-Israel, before giving $5 million to Rubio's 2016 presidential campaign. Rubio is now the Secretary of State, central to negotiating the Gaza ceasefire. But Larry's biggest political investment is the Tony Blair Institute. He's given them $350 million, more than 10 times what he gave the IDF. The Tony Blair Institute is a think tank and consultancy that promotes what they call neoliberal governance. They recruit from McKinsey, they share board members with Oracle. Former staff have described secret joint retreats at Ellison Properties. And here's where it gets dark. TBI essentially acts as a sales company for Oracle. They consult with governments in Rwanda, Indonesia, and other developing nations, offering altruistic solutions. Then they recommend Oracle as the remedy. Those countries get locked into predatory contracts they can't escape. TBI is also heavily pro-AI and pro-surveillance. Their website reads like an advertisement for the UK's Digital ID program, which would centralize all government data on citizens, health records, financial data, everything, into a single library. And the current Gaza ceasefire, TBI was heavily involved. Tony Blair himself has taken a leadership role. According to Israeli outlet N12, the Jerusalem Times, and Canary Media, Blair and Jared Kushner's plan for Gaza includes turning Gaza City into a tax-free zone for startups, with server farms for cloud computing and AI, and factories employing cheap local labor. Think about that. Larry Ellison is using his money and influence to help reshape Gaza into a data center hub. Oracle would run the infrastructure. They'd control the surveillance systems. They'd process the data. It's not about religious belief. It's about power and profit, exploiting a humanitarian crisis to build infrastructure that Larry can control and monetize. And if you think that's bad, wait until you hear what happened with TikTok. In 2020, Trump announces TikTok is a national security threat. The app needs to be banned unless ByteDance sells it to American investors. But here's what really happened. TikTok became a problem for a different reason after October 7, 2023, when Hamas attacked Israel and Israel escalated its response in Gaza. TikTok became the primary platform where young Americans learned what was happening, not from CNN, not from CBS, from TikTok. American politicians noticed. "We have a TikTok problem," they said. "We're losing the narrative on Israel." By the time Trump started his second term, the foundation for banning TikTok was already set. Larry Ellison was there to reap the rewards. January 2025. TikTok is facing a nationwide ban unless it sells 80% of its U.S. operations. Then Donald Trump steps in. On September 25th, he signed an executive order clearing the path for a deal. The buyer? Oracle, Larry Ellison. The structure is brilliant. Oracle takes a 45% stake through a joint venture with Silver Lake, an Abu Dhabi fund, Michael Dell, and Rupert Murdoch. ByteDance keeps 20%, but loses all control. Trump even suggested his son Barron might get a board seat. The whole thing reeks of crony capitalism, a powerful politician handing out lucrative deals to his rich buddies. Here's the important part. Oracle isn't just buying TikTok. They're rebuilding it. They'll retrain the algorithm from scratch using a licensed version from ByteDance. They'll store all American user data on Oracle servers in Texas. They'll monitor the recommendation system continuously to ensure, as the White House put it, content is free from improper manipulation or surveillance. Translation: Larry Ellison will control what 170 million Americans see when they open TikTok. The price? Around $14 billion. Facebook is worth $1.8 trillion with similar user numbers. TikTok's being acquired for less than 1% of that. It's definitely a massive discount. And the deal includes language that gives the government potential access to TikTok data. Trusted security partners may share information with other United States government officials. So Oracle gets the algorithm and the data. The government gets backdoor access. And Larry Ellison, one of the biggest supporters of Israeli military operations, now controls the platform that was showing Americans what was happening in Gaza. One of the first moves after the deal, TikTok hired personnel from Israel and the IDF to police anti-Semitic content on the platform. But TikTok is just one piece, because while Larry was taking over social media, his son was taking over Hollywood. A 23-year-old USC film school dropout named David Ellison makes his acting debut in a World War I action movie called Flyboys. He reportedly paid for at least part of the production budget himself. The movie tanked. David was so devastated that he had a cardiac episode. But here's the thing about being Larry Ellison's son. Failure doesn't mean you're out of money. It just means you try again with a bigger budget. 4 years later, David starts a production company called Skydance Media, named after his hobby of flying stunt planes. His father and associates seeded it with $350 million. Think about that. A guy who made one failed movie gets $350 million to try again. But David surprises everyone. He produces True Grit with his sister Megan, and it's a massive hit. Then he co-produces Mission Impossible films, Star Trek movies, and in 2022, Top Gun Maverick, one of the biggest blockbusters in years. David earned his stripes. He proved he wasn't just dumb money. He has taste. He understands spectacle. He's methodical, data-driven, doesn't drink, and likes explosions. Still, he's producing someone else's movies on someone else's platforms, and David wants more. In July 2024, David convinces Sherry Redstone to sell him Paramount Global for $8 billion. Overnight, he owns CBS, MTV, Nickelodeon, Paramount Pictures, Showtime, Pluto TV, BET, and Comedy Central. But there's a problem. President Trump is suing CBS for $20 billion over how they edited a 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris. The lawsuit is blocking federal approval of the merger. So David makes a calculated move. He convinces Paramount to settle with Trump for $16 million, pocket change compared to an $8 billion acquisition. Within weeks, the FCC, now run by Trump appointee Brendan Carr, approves the merger. Trump himself praised the deal publicly, saying David had promised significant changes to CBS News. Some reports even suggested that David promised $20 million in free advertising. Critics called it a bribe, a quid pro quo, pay-to-play politics. David called it business. The deal closes in August 2025. David installs himself as CEO, and one of his first major moves, he brings in Bari Weiss, a vocal Trump supporter and staunch defender of Israel, who built her career on genocide denial, as editor-in-chief of CBS News, reporting directly to David. Within months, CBS canceled The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. The Writers Guild demanded an investigation, suggesting the cancellation was intended as a favor to Trump. Then, 5 weeks after closing the Paramount deal, David announces something that shocks Wall Street. He's preparing a takeover bid for Warner Brothers Discovery. All of it: HBO, CNN, TNT, TBS, Discovery Channel, Food Network, HGTV, Warner Brothers Studios, DC Comics, Harry Potter, The Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Batman, and Superman. The initial offer, $20 per share. Warner Brothers says no, too low. David comes back with $24 per share, about 70% cash. Warner Brothers says no again. But David doesn't need the board to say yes. He can go directly to shareholders. And those shareholders are watching their stock price double on rumors alone. They're seeing a mostly cash offer from a guy backed by one of the richest men alive. A guy who just proved he can get government approval, even when it seems impossible. Most insiders believe the deal will eventually close. And when it does, the Ellisons will control CBS News and CNN under one roof. Paramount Pictures and Warner Brothers Studios, HBO Max and Paramount Plus merged into a streaming empire with over 200 million subscribers. Combined revenue, about $93 billion. Same size as Disney, twice the size of Netflix. But Disney doesn't own TikTok. Netflix doesn't control the algorithm. They're just making content. The Ellisons would control both the content and the distribution, the movies and the algorithm that decides who sees them, the news and the platform that decides who watches it, and all of it is being built on Oracle's infrastructure. Let's zoom out and look at the complete picture of what's being built here. Oracle is investing billions into NVIDIA, the company that makes AI chips. NVIDIA is investing billions into OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT. OpenAI is renting infrastructure from Oracle to train their models. It's a triangle of the three most powerful AI companies on Earth, all feeding into each other, money flowing in circles. Each company makes the others more valuable. Oracle is building data centers that cost between $50 and $100 billion just to construct. They're core partners in Stargate, a $500 billion AI infrastructure project backed by OpenAI, SoftBank, BlackRock, and sovereign wealth funds from Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Argentina just announced a deal with OpenAI for a Stargate data center. The countries involved have been buying Trump's cryptocurrency. He's received over $2 billion from it. Trump's son just signed a deal to build a $1 billion Trump Tower in Dubai. It's all connected. Tech billionaires, oil money, political power, media control, data infrastructure, and Larry Ellison sits at the center of it all. Now, imagine you're a politician. You want to run for president. CNN, controlled by the Ellisons. CBS News, controlled by the Ellisons. TikTok's algorithm, controlled by them. The AI systems analyzing everything you say online, running on their servers. The databases storing your health records, financial data, and government information, Oracle. That phone call to Larry and David isn't optional anymore. It's mandatory. Before you even announce your campaign, you need their blessing, because they control what people see, what goes viral, what's trending, What's news? People compare the Ellisons to the Vanderbilts and Rockefellers, the railroad barons and oil tycoons of the early 1900s. But that comparison doesn't go far enough. You can regulate railroads. You can break up oil companies under antitrust law. But how do you regulate information itself? How do you break up an empire built on data, algorithms, and the very thoughts and attention of hundreds of millions of people? Larry Ellison is 81 years old. When he's gone, David inherits not just a fortune, but an integrated empire of media, technology, data, and artificial intelligence that no single family has ever controlled. And most people don't even know their names. There's a famous quote about power. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. That's Larry Ellison's entire strategy. While Elon Musk bought Twitter and made himself the main character, Larry built an empire in the shadows. While Mark Zuckerberg testified before Congress and became the face of Facebook's problems, Larry stayed invisible. Oracle doesn't advertise to consumers. They advertise to corporations. You've probably never seen an Oracle commercial. You've definitely never thought about who runs the databases at your bank, your hospital, or your government. That's by design. Because the most powerful empires aren't the ones everyone can see. They're the ones that become so essential, so embedded, so foundational, that by the time you notice them, it's too late to do anything about it. And here's the truly terrifying part. There's almost no resistance. Warner Brothers rejected David's offers, but that's just negotiating for a higher price. Senator Elizabeth Warren called for blocking the merger, but she's one of maybe 5 voices speaking up. Most politicians are silent or supportive because Larry Ellison has spent decades cultivating relationships at the highest levels of power. He's positioned himself and his son as patriots saving American media from foreign control. He's made donations and investments that create webs of mutual interest. When you're worth over $250 billion, you don't ask for permission, you ask for forgiveness. And usually, you don't even need to do that. The comparison people should be making isn't to Rockefeller or Vanderbilt. It's to something older, something more fundamental. In feudal times, power came from controlling land. If you owned the land, you owned everything built on it. The farmers who worked it, the merchants who traded on it, the lords who governed it. Larry Ellison is building digital feudalism. He owns the land, the servers, the infrastructure, the databases. Everything else is built on top of what he controls. And just like feudal landlords, he can raise the rent whenever he wants. He can evict whoever he wants. He can watch everything that happens on his land. Except his land isn't physical, it's digital, and it's everywhere. Your data, your media, your information, your reality, all filtered through infrastructure controlled by one family. In 20 years, when Larry is gone and David is running the whole operation, we might look back at 2025 as the year when the future was decided, when the foundation was laid for digital feudalism, when one family quietly assembled more control over information than any king, emperor, or dictator in history. Or maybe, just maybe, we'll look back and realize it was already too late, that by the time we noticed the cage, we were already inside it, that the empire was built while we were scrolling, streaming, and clicking, completely unaware that someone was watching, recording, analyzing, and controlling. Welcome to the age of Ellison, the invisible empire, the cage you didn't see coming. Thank you for watching.